Welcome back to Furtitude and Flow, the podcast. Today I'm joined by Deborah Feathers from Miami. We're going to talk about trauma, healing, and relationships today. So welcome.
Thank you.
But yeah, we're going to talk about very important topics today that a lot of people around the world is struggling with. So I think it's going to be very exciting.
I think so too, and I hope that this conversation helps a lot of people.
I hope so too. Probably will. So I was thinking actually when it comes to trauma in the body, and that would be probably complex PTSD, why does trauma get stuck in the body?
So, why does trauma get stuck in the body? I think first we need to describe what that even means, that it gets stuck in the body. People say trauma lives in the body and that doesn't mean that, your shoulder is holding, emotional receipts from 2007. It's more that your nervous system keeps reacting as if the threat is still present. So trauma isn't just the event, it's what happens when an overwhelming experience doesn't get fully processed. So instead of becoming something that's clearly in the past, it stays active in the system and present through physical sensations, emotional reactivity, or a general sense of unease. So the mind might say, I'm safe now, but the body's like, I'm going to need more evidence. So what happens when it's stored, or what was the question specifically?
Yes. Basically, if people experience some kind of trauma, let's just take an example. Like you said, it's a lot of situations. Could be, for example, an earthquake, it could be a fire, it could be sexual abuse, it could be adoption traumas, which we need to go a little bit into because it's very interesting and a lot of my listeners will definitely benefit of learning something from that. So basically, if you experience something, a person, that a trauma, what, why, like you said, why does what happens with the processing there, and you can experience PTSD? Why is it like that?
So what's really happening is that these survival responses, like you've probably heard of fight, flight, maybe even freeze or fawn, like a shutdown, they get stuck in a loop. So normally your body would activate, respond, and then settle back down. But with trauma, that cycle doesn't fully complete. So the nervous system keeps revisiting these states. That's why people can feel chronically anxious or numb, reactive, or exhausted. And it's not random, it's a system that learned how to survive and just hasn't gotten the memo that the threat is over.
Yes, and from my own experience at least, it can be extremely overwhelming. It can be like you are more irritating, you cannot sleep, you are always in panic mode, a lot of anxiety, you can feel nauseous, you always be depleted of energy and very depressed because of all of these symptoms. And yeah, for me, I've been living with those type of things most of my whole life actually, and mistreated unfortunately in the Norwegian system for 15 years, misdiagnosed and stuff. So I think that something that at least my therapist never understood. We never worked with traumas that was stuck in the body. We were talking a lot cognitively, and
Yes.
obviously did not help for me. So, what would be a good way to work with people with these type of problems?
So the most evidence-based approaches still include trauma-focused therapies like EMDR, prolonged exposure, cognitive processing therapy. I would say CBT. They all kind of help the brain and body actually process what got stuck rather than just talk around it. And at the same time, we're seeing a big shift toward including the body in healing. So things like somatic work, so body-based stuff, grounding, movement, and parts work. So IFS are helping people feel safe again and not just understood in their story, which is the more cognitive stuff like CBT. So the reality is trauma healing usually isn't just one method. It's a combination of approaches that help the nervous system, the mind, the relationships all come back into alignment. And it's different for every person. Different things work for different people.
Yes, Definitely it does. But EMDR seems to have been very positively working for a lot of people right now. Can you explain what actually happened when you do that, and explain what, for example, EMDR is?
So I'm not as well versed in EMDR as I would like to be. I'm looking to get into the training for EMDR soon, but I would not feel comfortable explaining it to the audience in a way that I feel would be accurate.
Okay, I understand that. It's fine. But I can just share then. I've been working with my therapist when it comes to EMDR for a while now, and
Okay.
definitely helped me a lot. And that's the eye movement thing you do, like
Eye
this,
movement
or
desensitization reprocessing.
that's, yeah, exactly. And it's been helping me a lot. And it seems that at least what I've read is that it's something with the brain while you are talking about, for example, the trauma, and while you're doing this, like you
Hmm.
said, it's processing where it was stuck, the memory maybe. You process it differently, and it helps you actually come further, or maybe after a while relieve the trauma, at least, so it's not that so much intense, doesn't feel so much intense anymore. At
Yes,
least that's
the
how
goal
it
is to
experienced
decrease
for
the
me.
intensity.
Yeah, at least for me, that's how it experienced it, at least. Yeah. So what do you think that when it comes to these traumas that stays in the body for a long time, why do you think it's been taking such a long time for people to, or the science even, to understand these type of things?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's because of the way that we have to set up the experiments and the trials because and it's going to be hard for me to explain this and I don't fully, I don't think I have a great explanation for it, but there's different you have to think back to your, I don't know what grade it would be, like your eighth grade science class, where, you're thinking of the scientific method, the difference between, quantitative data, qualitative data, and, what's peer reviewed, what's, all of those things. And, you know, how possible those things are within our field when it comes to certain modalities. CBT is probably the most studied therapeutic modality that we have. And then when it comes to, how the studies are conducted and with what populations they're conducted on, because most of these studies are conducted on, the white male population. So that's not necessarily applicable to everyone. So that's part of, where that creates an issue and where, I wouldn't say we're just now getting into it because we're not just now getting into it, but, getting into the somatic, side of things. It's creating a change from just the top down approaches to the bottom up approaches as well.
Yeah, it makes sense. And for me, it seems I'm from Norway and India, and I've been
Hmm.
living in Europe my whole life. And at least what I've understand is that all the science comes from the US. So it takes longer time for new methods and things to come to Europe. So it seems to me it's over there where everything, all the decisions are made, and things like that as well. Because it's a lot of
That's
different
interesting.
therapies that was not available for us back 15 years ago in Norway, which you
Hmm.
had over there, and people who were trained to do it and stuff. So a lot of times I wish I was in a country where it was more available things, like ketamine treatment for depression, for example.
Of course. That's very big right now.
And it seems to me it's been big in the US for a long time. So yeah, do you think that has PTSD been more a neurological problem as much as psychological?
I think, PTSD is difficult to treat because it sits, right at the intersection of the brain body experience and it absolutely has neurological components. It affects how the brain processes threat, memory, safety, but it's also deeply psychological and relational. You're not just dealing with fear responses, you're also dealing with meaning, identity, and trust. So treating it requires more than just changing thoughts or calming the body. It involves the entire system to update its sense of reality.
Yeah, it makes sense, and it seems to me that it's all about maybe even learn something your body never learned before, your nervous system, or you
Mhm.
have to change a lot of things in your life. Maybe you need to start to live totally different, which
A lot of
requires a lot of
retraining.
time. Yeah, a lot of time and effort it does. And also, I think that it's traumas is like you said. It seems to me a lot of people can experience a lot of different type of traumas, of course, but you have these things that you mentioned that are very positively working right now. And it seems now, I don't know how it is in the US though, but in Norway at least, they are trying now to go away from medical treatments like pills and SSRIs and Prozac and stuff. They will rather go with
I
different
see.
methods. I don't know how it is over there.
I would say it's a debate, and I can't say that for sure, but I can say I've seen the debate where it's, there's the people that are for medication and there's the people that are against medication, and they each have their reasons for it. Personally, I believe in, a case by case basis. And I think that, it, like I said, case by case basis, it depends on the person, depends on the situation. And, often, I think if you're going to be on medication, I think it works best in conjunction with therapy.
Yeah, I totally agree actually. I do. It seems to me that medication are supposed to help you a little bit to ease your life, and then you need to get into the right treatments for you. I agree. Um, yeah, borderline personality disorder is a very
Mhm.
hard disorder for a lot of therapists to diagnose, and it's extremely hard to live with
Yes.
as well for people, and that's also because of traumas. How would someone how do you identify that a diagnosis, and how do you treat it if you have any ideas?
Borderline specifically, or how do you differentiate PTSD and borderline?
Yeah, actually, though, that's a very good. Yeah, that's also very good. You can start with the first.
Okay, yeah, because that's often what I'm seeing now, and there's a lot of discourse on this as well, is that people are being diagnosed with or misdiagnosed with borderline when it's really CPTSD, complex PTSD. So that distinction, again, I don't want to speak to it too much because, again, I am a therapist intern, so I don't want to, speak like I'm coming from a place of expertise. But I feel like they overlap more than people realize, especially in emotional intensity, reactivity, relationship struggles. Both can involve feeling overwhelmed, misunderstood, unsafe in connection. So I think PTSD is more rooted in fear and threat response tied to trauma, while borderline patterns are more about instability in identity and emotions and relationships, especially around closeness and abandonment. Abandonment is really key. If PTSD is asking, am I safe? I would say borderline patterns are often asking, am I okay? Or will you stay?
That was very good explained, and it's very hard for people with borderline to be in close relations with people. The fear
Hmm.
of abandonment, and more often than not, a lot of people, actually including myself, has been unfortunately ruining my relationships because of it. And when you are living with it, you don't even understand why you are doing it until someone explain you. So it's a very hard diagnose, and like you said, it's probably hard to see the difference from complex PTSD to borderline as well, because they blend maybe a lot into each other.
Exactly. There's a lot of overlap, and I think with systemic thinking, because I am a marriage and family therapist, intern, of course. The overlap is kind of where we look at all behavior makes sense in context. And when you've been affected by systems and, relational aspects, all these things, throughout your life, like everyone is, that's when, if you've experienced trauma, the complex PTSD comes in and the symptoms may mock things that look like borderline.
Exactly. And it's a very good to overlap actually there, because when it comes to adoption traumas, I don't know if you are have been working with it or not, but there you have the adoption trauma is very linked up to complex PTSD and borderline, and the fear of abandonment,
Mhm.
obviously. And it's not much knowledge about this, especially, for example, in Norway. This just became probably that we have few therapists who are trained to deal with people who have experienced that. Just recent years. I know in the US that you
Mhm.
have a lot more people who have been working with it, and again there, I don't know if you can answer or not, but it's like because you are in the field, and you are in the country where everything is made when it comes to the psychology and DSM-5 and these type of things. So it's like, why do you again think that adoption traumas has never been relevant, and why it's been so hard to put that into a system?
I think culturally, and, I'm speaking for, the United States, but I think culturally we tend to prefer simple, uplifting narratives, and adoption is often framed as a happy ending. And it can be, but it also begins with loss, and that part often gets overlooked. It's uncomfortable for people to hold both truths at once, that something can be deeply loving and still involve grief. So the conversation gets simplified, the complexity of the child's experience doesn't get the attention it deserves, and the awareness level goes down.
Yeah, that's definitely spot on, because unfortunately that's what's been happening in Norway again. It's not even today, right now as we speak. It's a lot of people, including myself, who is basically trying to put out put our stories out there in the media and newspapers,
Mhm.
and we trying to put this thing forward, so it's gonna be a change over there. But it's
Absolutely.
been very hard because so many people nationally adopt this in Norway, but also people like me. I'm adopt from India, so it's more clearly that I'm not ethnical Norwegian, but it's like I
Mhm.
can see that we are struggling with the same things, the sorrow, the abandonment, and hard to deal with because we cannot regulate our emotional systems when it comes to the borderline type of thing. And when we get older and we're trying to have normal lives and trying to maintain relationships and stuff, it's really hard
Of course.
because it's
And I
loss
think that comes back to it
again.
all makes sense in context.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like for us, we feel like we are a little bit betrayed again because there are no systems to take care of us. There are no therapists. There's no help to get or anything like that. So, but I do know in the US that you have a lot more people who are very good at it. And hopefully those type of things will come to Europe as well in the future.
Absolutely. I hope that they do, but, our system, while it has its pluses, there's definitely, its flaws to it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. I was thinking that I want to use this time to talk more about what you are actually working with because it's very interesting. And I think that again, when it comes to type of trauma that infects people, like for example, sexual abuse and relationships, and I think we can use some time to talk about that now.
Okay.
That's
Absolutely.
so. I was like, why do you think that the relationships can trigger trauma, unhealed trauma, and stuff like that? And
I think relationships are when we're most emotionally exposed. and they tend to activate old attachment patterns. A partner can unintentionally trigger feelings that have very little to do with the present moment and everything to do with past experiences. So, what looks like a small conflict can feel much bigger internally because it's touching something deeper.
Yeah, and that can actually happen daily, and it's not even like you said, it was not even meant to. It could be something you said or a
Mhm.
situation or something like that, and things can just blow out of proportions, and a small thing can, or for people, it can seem to be a small thing. For the person who actually get triggered, it's not. You know, it can really trigger someone so much, and that's obviously because they have not been working with the trauma and they are not even aware that they maybe have it, I'm guessing.
Very true.
Yeah. Um, you do work with couple therapies and stuff like that. If you are
Yes, I
going,
do.
if you are a couple and you choose to go down that route and try to get help or some guidance, or what do you think that most couple needs to be prepared for, and how do the mindset has to be, and how safe should people need to be on each other before they do something like that?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think, you have to think about why couples therapy works and when it does not. A couple therapy works when both people are willing to engage and take some responsibility and remain open to understanding each other. It doesn't work well when one or both partners are completely disengaged or unwilling to reflect, or when there is ongoing harm without accountability. So the process requires participation from both sides.
Yes. But do you think that the people who usually comes to a couple therapy, have they been together for years, or could it be just dating for a year, or you understand?
That's I guess the cool part about it is I've had people that have been dating for a couple of months. I've had people that have been dating for years and years. I've had, elderly couples that have been dating, I mean, not dating, married for, decades. It really, doesn't matter if the relationship is at a point where you feel like you need to seek couples therapy. And I would say the relationship itself matters to you and it's something you want to fight for. Then I think couples therapy is appropriate for you.
And it's very interesting, so I think we should go deeper there. And it's like the difference to work with someone who has just been dating for a few years or a few
Mhm.
months compared to someone who has been married. It's probably very different. I don't know. They have different
It's
problems,
different and it's
obviously, but
not.
okay. Do you have any stories you can tell? Something that you, what motivated you to go into these type of things, anyways?
Um, let's see, what do I start with? My motivation or the other? Um, I guess my motivation has been, my own life experiences with trauma and, my parents' divorce and experiences along those lines. I've dealt with a lot of medical trauma. So those experiences have brought me to my own therapy. And through that process, I've, come out the other side of it and seen it work and wanted to pursue it myself. And then with couples and the difference between someone who's been together, a couple months versus someone who's been married decades. I would say it's the same and it's different because, it's typically the same issues. Communication, things like that. I would say the difference is I would have to think about the difference. It's really the same issues. It's just maybe investment,
Yeah, okay.
the time that's been invested. If you're coming in, sometimes there's more a feeling of more at stake when you've been together for longer, when you have children, when you have built this whole life together.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. Then you don't want to throw everything away. You really probably are more motivated working on the relationship
Yes.
then. But something that you said there, communication is probably the word.
Yes.
Why do you think that
Communication
people
is always the biggest issue.
yeah, and why is that?
I think people just from the beginning, and this is just my personal opinion, I don't think people are taught from a young age how to communicate properly. And I think that starts at home. That's not the teacher's job to teach the students how to communicate. I think that is parent child, you need to teach how to communicate. You need to teach boundaries. You need to teach these things at home. And I don't think that it is taught well enough at home.
At least for men, it might be hard to talk about feelings. You know,
Absolutely.
if you haven't, yeah, like you said, if you haven't been taught to do that at home, it will not be easy to do that in a relationship where it's probably most needed when you think about it, when it comes to the communication with a partner. And it can be so many stupid misunderstandings or culture from the background you are from when it comes to family again.
Exactly.
And
Those are our templates for life and for how we do things, growing up and in adulthood. It's our childhood. That's our template. That's our model. That's what we, use going forward.
yeah, yeah, definitely it is. And I think that again, for men, it can be very hard because if you're not been given the chance to learn how to regulate your emotions or
Hmm.
maybe cry or express them, then it will be hard in a relationship as well. And especially when it comes being with women, because women are very emotional compared to men
Hmm.
and a lot better, at least, to express feelings and stuff and communicate. A lot of times, at least. And I think maybe for a man, again, the ego can come in a way, you understand? You want to be right.
Absolutely. I think, yeah.
And how do you, for example, then, if you have a couple, um, when do you recommend couple therapy? And if you have a couple there, how would you work with them?
That's a very broad question. I feel like it's a good question, but it's a broad question. So I feel like it's going to be dependent on the individual couple. And I think you know, that's a tough one for me.
We can, you know how people mirror each other in a relationship. How would
Yes.
that work? Can we talk a little bit about that? And then we can come back to the other thing.
Sure. Sure. I think a partner often reflects back parts of ourselves that we may not fully see, including our wounds, our defenses, and our patterns. This isn't about blame, but about awareness. So relationships tend to highlight what's unresolved, which can feel uncomfortable, but also creates an opportunity for growth.
Yes. And yeah, I can really relate to this one. And the thing is, how do you, yeah, very much. And stung a little bit here. But the thing is, when you mirror a person and you see a lot of things in yourself and unhealed trauma, for instance,
Hmm.
how do you communicate with your partner these type of things? And how do you, then you have the misunderstandings and the explosions and, you know, fuck off, leave me alone type of things, and the on and off things, and it's just horrible. But what do you do then? How would you recommend someone who are in that type of phase and situation? How do you start communicate to find some common ground even?
So again, it's a broad question, but I think, it's something that, is built through trust. And that's, consistent small interactions where each person feels heard, respected, and responded to. So it's less about grand gestures and more about reliability in everyday moments. So over time, those small experiences that you create will create a sense of safety that allow for deeper connection. And, that'll be through different exercises that you do in the therapy room. And it depends on, your therapist. It depends on their modality. It depends on a lot of different factors.
I think, like you said there, safety is definitely one of the keywords there, because when you feel safe around a person, you will open up more and you will let your defenses down more and the ego as well. And then you will be more able to understand the other person and yourself too, probably.
Yeah,
But do you have
absolutely.
any, for example, do you have any methods you would work with someone that you can, that would be helpful for someone who need just to communicate a little bit better with their partner? Do you have any exercise that could be good or people can check out?
Sure. One that you could just practice at home is using I statements. And it's a very silly one and one that, you have to be very careful with because people can use it and they can twist it and use it to their advantage. So using I statements would be, when you're trying to communicate with your partner. And I recommend, either sitting facing each other or sitting back to back, whichever you're most comfortable with to communicate whatever is going on at the time. And instead of saying, "You make me feel like A, B, C, and D," start with I. So, I feel like, this when, this happens, or I feel like, just start with I instead of the blaming statements. You see what I mean with the blaming with the,
Yes.
you do this or you do that or you make me feel or, you know, take away the you and replace it with the I. But don't use it to you know, twist it around and, say like, I feel like you are, doing A, B, C, and D. You have to be careful how you do it. And I could always provide a simple exercise that you could put on your website if you would like for people to have.
That would be really cool, actually. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, I think that's very good what you're saying there, because it's so easy when you get mad or angry or offended or to blame someone else.
To
You
just
put
take away
the
the
whole
blame.
yes, and you put the whole responsibility towards that person, how you feel when you are blaming someone else. So, and the other person will definitely go more in defense then, and then you can have communication lost like there already.
Exactly.
I think that happens to a lot of couples. At least it's been happening to me. But I think love is never easy, is it, huh?
No, it definitely is not.
How can people build a healthy relationship, do you think?
I think this is going to come back to, trust, communication, and building a space that is safe emotionally. Again, consistent small interactions where each person feels heard and respected.
Yes, I think that's when you are explaining it, it seems so easy, but it maybe is.
But it's
Maybe it
not.
should be. Maybe it should be. I don't know. It could be.
Idealistically, it should be, but the reality is relationships are hard.
Yeah, it is.
And
It really
that's
is.
that's the truth.
But what are the key
They take
foundation
work.
then? I mean, do you should, yeah, how much time do you spend together? Do you go on dates regularly? Are you traveling together? Are the other person trying to show some interest in things that you are interested in? Are all these small micro adjustments important?
Yeah, and there's just so many different dynamics to that it's, how much time should you do this? How and it's gonna depend on the dynamic. It's gonna depend on the couple. It's gonna depend on, do you have kids? Do you not have kids? Are you in a relationship that is,
Yeah.
of 2 people, of 3 people? Is, more? What is the dynamic in general? Because it's going to be different for everybody. There's no one size fits all.
No, no, not at all. And people change as well. And I think that in a relationship is probably, like you said, the safety again. you need to allow people to change as well and grow together as well.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's not always easy either. I think that, you know, how do you think how much do you think that it impacts people who with age difference, for instance? Is that a big problem or could it be good? Again, obviously it depends from each individual person, but have you been working with something like that?
I have not worked with something like that, at least not recently. Worked with anyone with a, age gap relationship. But, I know my answer has been it depends for everything. That tends to be my answer for everything is it depends. But I think, as long as it's between, two consenting adults, how it affects the relationship is going to depend. But if we look at how it'll affect the relationship, differences in what's it called? Not differences in what is it? Well, the differences in age, the differences in you know, the times that we grew up and the times that
Yes.
we, just those time periods are very different. And, the cultures that we grew up around, it's all the same factors in any other relationship, but, throw in the age factor.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely everything you said is totally correct, and I can tell you that because I've been, and I would say that the person I've been with now, she's 19 years older than me, and we've been dealing with a lot of these type of things because, like you said, totally different time periods that we grew up in, a lot of different
Hmm.
life experience. Obviously, she have a lot more life experience than I have because she's a lot
Hmm.
older, and but I think it's been working as well because the curiosity to each other's person is very exciting actually, and these type of things, and you can learn a lot from each other
Hmm.
because of the age difference as well. And then you find out that love is not just that it has to be in a box or anything. It can be very wide and good and positive as well. Doesn't have to
Absolutely.
be stuck to an age or something like that. That's what I meant. But definitely, I think the core thing, like you said, is creating the safety and be good in communicating and having the effort to communicate even when it's hard in general.
Definitely.
Um, yes, I was thinking as well. Couple therapy is something that maybe a lot of people are a little bit embarrassed of doing, or
Hmm.
these type of things. What would you say to these type of people who think that?
I would say, couples therapy is not necessarily just like with individual therapy, it's not necessarily a sign that there's anything wrong or broken. It's just a sign that, you see that I don't know how to phrase it, but just, I would say that you're being smart,
Yeah.
You're being proactive, It's something that you don't even have to do if, you feel like, you know, you're at, dire straits, it's something that can be done for maintenance, it's something that it doesn't mean the end. It doesn't mean, that you've done something wrong. It just means, it is what it is, and it's okay.
Yes, I think that's a very good answer on that. And I was thinking as well, when it comes to, I don't know how it is over in the US though, but in Norway and seems
Hmm.
to me Europe and stuff, the dating scene has been changing a lot because of the
Yes.
apps and stuff. But it seems to me that at least people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, at least in Norway, they are struggling to find a suitable partner because I think
Hmm.
the world is more shallow right now and people are always expecting more or waiting for something that's perfect. But obviously, it's nothing like that. So people are more alone now, it seems. And how is it over there?
I would say it's just about the same. We're um seeing the same, statistics that, people in the late 20s, 30s, 40s range are, either not married, not producing children, et cetera, et cetera, and for, the same or similar reason.
Yeah, I think that it's very uncommon today to find someone. It seems to me that people are more chasing careers and their dreams and other type of things, and then they probably
Hmm.
maybe they meet someone and then they get kids in the late 30s instead of the early 20s. These type of things happens in Norway at least, and because
Yes.
I mean it's very expensive to live in Norway as well, so to have a good job and education is very important as well in these days and how the world works right now. So maybe that's one of the reasons too. But I think that I don't think that it seems to me that people are seeking the depth and the real thing, but they are not willing to work for it, if you understand what I mean.
I agree, and I think, it's very similar here in the US where, people are very career oriented and, I would just say that people are very career oriented and, reproducing later and later in life.
Yeah, then it's totally the same. And that's probably something that happened more in the Western societies, maybe then. I was also thinking that we can talk more about you if you want to. You can tell people a little bit about who you are and where you're from and your passion for being a therapist and helping people.
Sure. I'll give a little brief bio, I guess, and then if you have any questions, feel free. I was born and raised in Miami, Florida, USA, and I'm an adoptive mom, and I was a belly dancer for I think about 20 years now, and I am a therapist intern. I graduate in exactly 1 day. Like tomorrow, I finish my master's and it'll be
Wow.
done. And then I get my registered marriage and family therapist intern status. So that'll be exciting. I'm going to start my master's in business administration, and I'm looking at a PhD in couple and family therapy. So, that's my path. I'm, very enthusiastic about the work that I do, especially trauma-focused work. I worked at a trauma center that was, a community mental health center. So a lot of work there, but I really enjoyed it. And now I'm going to be moving into a private practice setting.
Very interesting. It seems to me that you have done a lot in the last few years.
I've
Really,
tried to. I've kept myself, that's for sure, to that category of like the 30-year-old that's, more career oriented than everything else.
okay, that's good. Good to be motivated. And it seems to me that you are very passionate about it. You really want to
Definitely.
help people. And you said something about adopted. I was just curious. Did you?
Yes, I have 2 daughters. They're not officially adopted. They're adopted, I say, by heart. So they were, I won't go into the full, explanation, but they are my 2 adult children, and they are my entire world.
That's great. I'm very glad to hear that. It's very nice.
Absolutely.
What would you say to someone who wants to study and to become a therapist and stuff? Because it's a lot. Do you have to be a very academic mindset and stuff like that? Is it very hard? How many years is it in the US and how does it work over there?
So you're going to be in school, and it's going to be a lot of work, and there's going to be a lot of work after school as well, getting your hours for a licensure, and I'll explain that in a minute. But I would say if you have the heart for it, go for it. If it's something in your heart that you want to do, absolutely go for it. It is usually 4 years for bachelor's and then 2 years for your master's. I did everything in 3.5 years, but that's
Wow,
a whole other story. I have issues
that's a
as
lot.
far as, ambitions. So that's
Good
that.
for you.
But, thank you. Um when you go into your internship, which is something you'll be required to do, or your practicum, which is before your internship, you will have to acquire a certain amount of hours under supervision, and then you'll graduate and you'll have to acquire another certain amount of hours depending on your state under supervision before you get your full licensure, which is the process that I'm about to enter into. So it's a lot of work, but I think it's worth it. And, the first time a client says to you, "You've changed my life," I mean, it doesn't get better than that. Not to be cheesy,
That's
but,
it's must feel good to hear something like that, and you know that you made a very good and positive impact in somebody's lives.
definitely. Because I think it's, again, you change one person's life, it's not about changing, the whole world, but you change one life. And I think that's all we can ask for, you know?
It's very true, and I totally agree. And for a lot of patients, or how do you say it, clients, you can say that a lot of people have been struggling for a lot of years, and they maybe been trying a lot of different
Mhm.
people and stuff, and methods and medications, and you only need one to so you can find to work with. That's a good thing. You only need one that you need to find, and you build confidence and trust, and you work together to create your life better. So it's always
Exactly.
hope.
There's always hope. And I think it's, you have to find the therapist that is the right fit for you. You know,
Yeah.
you won't work well with every therapist, not every therapist will be a fit for you. And that's something I always say in my first session is, I might not be the therapist for you, and that's okay. If I'm not the therapist for you, if we're not, or if our personalities don't work, I'll find you another therapist. We'll refer you to someone else, and, we'll find the one that works, the one that clicks.
I love what you said there, because I really believe that, unfortunately, like we all are humans, but I think it's extremely important for a therapist to be humble and be a good listeners, and try to have as much as empathy, and try to understand how the client experience the world and feel, and also not let the ego come in a way when it's like you said, it's totally okay if it doesn't work with me, then I will help you to find someone else. I think that's very important and a very good thing. So
Absolutely. And that comes from personal experience. I didn't work with certain therapists, and then I found the one that worked for me, and it was great, and I got the help I need.
yes, totally agree, and I can relate to that, because it's the same case for me. Actually, finally it worked. It just took 15 years, which is oh,
I get that.
poof, it was too long. Still work in
I
progress,
I get that. I definitely get that. Took me a while too.
but it's still hope for people who are in the
Mhm.
darkest hour, and where they are about to give up on life and stuff. You can really get better, and it's totally worth it, because it's really awesome to live this life on this planet when you have a good life, of course. Yes. So uh, the word fortitude is the name of the podcast, and it means strength. What kind of state of mind, mental qualities, or personal techniques have you relied on most throughout your life, and as a therapist?
Ooh, specific techniques. I would say perseverance. Just perseverance and pushing through, when things get hard, and resilience as well.
That actually it makes very much sense. Those two in what we talked about now. like you said, you've been through your trauma yourself, and you've been working hard now, so you soon are a therapist, licensed therapist very soon. So it makes sense when you say those type of things, and I think those are very good qualities to have in life,
Absolutely.
because life is not always going to be easy. A lot of times it's going to be a lot of trials and tribulations to get through, and that's very good answers. Very inspiring talking to you.
Thank you.
So also, if people want to get some help from you or check you out more, where can they contact you?
They can contact me at my Instagram, which is at Deborah Deborah _feathers, as in bird feathers, Feathers. That would be the best place to contact me.
Okay, awesome. And I also just want to say thank you for being a part of the Fortitude and Flow, the podcast, and so much congratulations for your degree and your license.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. If you liked this episode, it would mean a lot if you liked, shared, and subscribed, and left a comment with any ideas how to improve the podcast. All of this would really help the podcast grow. Thank you for your support.